couple of people reach out to me and ask how I started my own business. So I decided to put together a list of how I made my business when I started and how I got to where I am now. Starting at the very beginning, I learned how to sew when I was 12. No one taught me how. I learned just by watching videos on YouTube and by just trying new things. I first started by creating a sock monkey, which I wish that I had still, but I don't. But you don't need anyone to necessarily teach you how to sew or do any type of craft. There's so many tutorials out there. Just check YouTube, and many people have Patreons where they show you the close-ups and the details and how they do a certain art style. So if you're discouraged because you don't have anyone in your life to teach you, there's so many ways that you can learn on your own. And this includes every hobby and craft outside of sewing. So many of the things that I've learned, and even starting my own business, I had no one to teach me, but luckily there are so many platforms like YouTube that I'm able to just search up anything and find an answer. About a year ago, I bought my iPad and I started to sell stationery items, including stickers and keychains and pins, and I'm gonna show you my model and all of that stuff. And I think having an iPad really helps with small businesses. I like using my iPad for the sole purpose of business, and it's a lot easier to keep track of it when it's on my iPad rather than my phone. It's also fun to draw. After sewing for a pretty long time, I decided that I'm comfortable enough to start selling in person. And so I would just sell to my friends and family and to their friends and family. I would make absolutely no money back, but at the time I just wanted them to pay for materials so that I could just keep creating. I did that all throughout high school. And when I was in sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to take it a bit more seriously, and so I tried to make my own Etsy shop. Only having my dad in my life and not being able to have a job at the time made it pretty difficult to start my Etsy. I had no ID or anything like that, and I wasn't of age yet, so I had to use all of my dad's info, and he was a little behind on the thing, so it was a bit difficult to create. Luckily, my boyfriend helped me out and I was able to use his information, which I don't recommend necessarily because it's a bit risky using bank information and stuff like that. Luckily, it worked out for me, but don't recommend it to everyone. And after a couple of months, I finally was able to start up my Etsy. Making listings on Etsy was very easy, and I didn't have to make a storefront or anything like that with their platform, but I quickly realized that the fees were really adding up and I needed to make a change. So I looked into creating my own website with a platform like Shopify or Squarespace, and after looking into it, I finally settled on Shopify. The plan that I have now, I believe I pay $29 a month, which compared to the fees on Etsy is so worth it, and I recommend making your own. It was so easy to put together that you might as well try it. I've had my Shopify for almost a year now, and I have no plans on switching. I'm currently doing my taxes, and with Shopify it's a bit more complicated than Etsy, but altogether, including the taxes and the difficulty of making your own website, I highly recommend this. In between switching from Etsy and Shopify, I also sold at a couple of markets. These were really fun, but I didn't make as much money as I thought I would. The fees of traveling and setting up and having to purchase a table to be there really started to add up. That being said, a lot of people make a ton of money doing markets and stuff like that, and it's worth it for them. But for me personally, I made more money selling online, and I was able to find my own audience. I was in a really good spot with Instagram where they were trying to figure out their new algorithm with Reels and stuff like that. It took me 4 years to get to 1,000 followers, and in less than a year, I hit 90K. I'm not trying to be humble by saying that I definitely don't think that I would have gained as much if they weren't doing that. I think it was purely just luck, but I can give a few tips to posting and gaining followers. First of all, post regularly. I think this is what helped me out the most. I notice still if I post later in the day, it doesn't get as much traction as it would have if I posted it at the same time that I normally do, which is earlier in the morning. I also recommend taking high quality pictures. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need a high quality camera, but to have a nice background and to have nice lighting in the picture. Whenever I post a picture that isn't in my normal setting, it doesn't get as many likes and shares as it normally does. Trying new things with your crafts can also bring in a new audience and can help you gain followers. I notice when I try different plushies and different styles and different artwork, a new audience comes and forms. Another thing I recommend is to try different platforms. At least make an effort to see if your things will boost on there and keep updating it. I like to post on Facebook, and I tried TikTok and it didn't really work out, but I also am active on Patreon and other things like that. Twitter, for example. Make an effort and just find out what works for you. One thing that really scared me when I started selling on Etsy was shipping. I could not figure out how shipping labels were made, and it wasn't until after I started that I figured out that Etsy already makes the shipping labels and does everything for you after you put in the package size and all of that. I buy my packages from Uline, and buying in bulk really helps save money. I used to just print out pieces of paper with the shipping label and then tape it onto the packages, which works if you don't make that many orders, but once you start selling more than one item a week, it becomes a hassle. So I definitely recommend buying a thermal label printer. It has saved me so much time, and they're fairly cheap depending on where you get them. Unless you're doing flat rate, a scale is a necessity. I found mine for cheap on Amazon. To enhance my packaging and make it feel a bit more personal, I like to buy little memo pads and write personal notes and thank everyone for their order. I also like to thrift stamps in little envelopes to send with the orders, and I also make stickers that I include as extras. Including extras isn't a necessity. That being said, I think it gives a little bit of an exciting experience to the customer when they open the package. Here is a little list of what I like to use when I package. Lastly is finances. When I started sewing, it wasn't supposed to be a full-time job for me, but later on I realized that this is something I'm passionate about and I want to make money doing it this way. It did worry me in the beginning, trying to figure out if I could make a living off of this since I had to pay rent and it was my only source of income. But with weekly updates and Patreon subscriptions and marketing myself on other platforms and trying to monetize that, I am completely able to live off of what I make selling my art. That being said, this isn't for everybody, and I would definitely say this should be a side hustle starting off. Once you're comfortable enough to start making a living off of this and you have enough saved, I would recommend it, but I don't think you should quit your job and start selling right away. I think you need to keep your livelihood where it is now and then see how selling art would fit in your finances. And that's all I have for today with my suggestions and my little background stories. If you have any questions about selling your own stuff or just promoting yourself online, please comment them below. I would love to help you guys out. Thank you so much for sticking to the end, and I can't wait to talk to you guys again.